Hey there, and welcome back to my Factorio 1.0 tutorial Let's Play. I'm Xterminator, and thank you for joining me again today, and we have some big plans for this episode. I've been doing some thinking, and I really want to start making our way towards yellow science. We've been doing a fair bit of things that were not really science building related. It has been a fair bit since we've worked over in this area, and I think it's time we get back to that. Now we are being attacked. There are some bases that would be advantageous to clear out. These two in particular, this one as well as this one. So far, we are defending things okay. Having a turret here, I think, will be good. I would be very surprised if we did not get attacked right here. So I do want to keep an eye on that. Of course, I'm saying that and not actually doing anything about it, primarily just because I don't want to run all the way over there right this minute when I just stated all these grand plans of things I want to do. So to work towards the next science, high-tech or yellow science, as it's called by a lot of people, first off, we would need to unlock that. So let's find it here. We actually have a fair bit to go until we can unlock it, but we can start working on all the components, while it works. So the three things here, the three requirements are advanced circuits, advanced oil processing, and low density structures. I'm going to start with advanced circuits because we actually need to, I wanted to work on those today. I guess I thought that maybe we'd already unlocked those. And find the yellow pack again. I'm going to go ahead and queue up. I actually was not taking advantage of our backspace hotkey I showed a while ago. It's very new to me. It is a new feature in 1.0, so it's new to me as well. It takes a little bit of getting used to. We can then move down to lubricant, which we will need. So I'll do that. And then low density structures we will also need. I'm just going to queue up pretty much everything we'll need for this. And in the spirit of accelerating this, I'm going to make a few more labs as well. Actually, I'm going to walk back down here and grab some inserters. And the first thing I did want to work on was the processing units. That's usually the first thing I do work on, just because it's actually fairly easy. Blue circuits is kind of interesting. Things sway back and forth in the game, throughout the game, in their complexity. So, we have green circuits, which are pretty straightforward-ish, fairly simple once you get the hang of it. And then you have red circuits, which are a fair bit more complicated, particularly just because they require an oil product, and up to that point you hadn't really needed them. And then blue circuits, the processing units / blue circuits, are quite simple in the fact that they only take electronic circuits and red circuits, which you're already making. You already basically have to have had those being made. And then it also just takes sulfuric acid, which you also probably maybe already made, depending on your situation. We actually haven't, simply because we haven't needed to yet. So I think while we wait for this research, it would actually be a great opportunity to do this now, to make the labs, but I'm noticing this is actually progressing fairly quickly. And sulfuric acid is fairly simple. We need iron plate, sulfur, and water. Now we're already making sulfur here. However, I think that taking from this sulfur machine would not be good, just because this is actually used directly for another science pack. I think we would definitely benefit by setting up a special setup for this. And this is a bit of an interesting ratio, this one, because we can see here it takes 1 second and 5 sulfur, and in 1 second we make 2 sulfur. So it actually takes 2.5 of these machines, 2.5 sulfur machines, to get the amount of sulfur you need. Now, obviously, you cannot create half a machine, like as we've seen before. So we're gonna have to either underestimate or overestimate this, or as some of you may have already mapped out in your heads, we could do 5 sulfur machines to 2 sulfuric acid machines, and that would then be a perfect ratio. And of course, they're whole numbers, so we can build those. That is quite overkill, in my opinion, for this stage of the game. It's extreme overkill, in fact. You know, I do mention overproducing a bit and doing a little overkill, but that's like extreme, excessive overkill for this part of the game. So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually, in this case, just because it's a little easier to build and we really do not need that much sulfuric acid at this point, I'm actually going to underproduce. I know that kind of contradicts everything I said, but when I was, when I made those statements about, overproducing, that was pretty much all in regards to science or very, um, materials that are very high consumption, like iron and circuits and just anything related to, directly to science in here. Sulfuric acid, though, you really only need this for a couple things, one of which being blue circuits, and the other being batteries. And if we take a look here at these blue circuits, you'll notice they take 10 seconds and they only need 5 sulfuric acid. Well, in 1 second, in a tenth of the time it takes to make a blue circuit, we've already created 10 times the acid we need. So if you multiply that all out, I mean, this can just supply a absurd amount of blue circuit machines. If my math is correct, it should be 100 if this were running fully. Just very quick math. I could be wrong on that. I'm pretty sure that's correct because we produce 10 times the amount and it takes a tenth of the time. So like 10 times 10, right? And, so what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 machines making sulfur into 1 machine making sulfuric acid, which means the machine making sulfuric acid won't quite work fully. It is short a quote-unquote half of a chemical plant. But that's, in this case, that's really not a problem just due to what we just went over. So we could build this here. I'm actually going to build this over here just because I do want to try to avoid getting too close to our mall, our hub section over there, just in case I may need to expand out on that. So we're going to place these here. And there's a few ways we can do this. I'm actually going to space this out a little bit here, and I think use long-handed inserters, and you'll see why. So we can go here. We've already made sulfur, so we know this recipe. There's not a lot to really cover with this. We've already made it here. And this will be the same case with you. You can kind of just copy the setup you have here, and you will have at least already experienced it. So I'm going to do this, and I am spacing these apart, again, for the reasoning with pretty much everything else here, is it makes the fluids, the liquids, quite a bit easier to run, at least in my experience. Because when they're right next to each other, you can't have these underground pipes really working like this, and you then have a very hard time setting it up so the fluids don't mix. So that's something, definitely something to keep in mind. Now, I actually goofed up a little bit here. I think I'm going to just redo this before I plug it in. I just goofed up a little bit and put these into the wrong input based on where our pipes were. Our water, you'll notice, is actually close by, just like the one directly by the chemical plant. And I do want to try to copy that here just because it makes it easier to run across. You see I was about to do something a lot more convoluted that really was not necessary. And this is a perfect example. And again, I don't always follow this, but this is a perfect example of not being afraid to tear some things up when you're building them and just redo them. I could have just proceeded to build it as I was going to build it, and it certainly would have worked. It would have taken just a little bit more time. It would have been a lot more messy, but it would have worked. However, I tore it up, and now it just is smoother. The process of putting it together and the look of it. Don't be afraid to do that. Okay, so we're producing this at quite a quick rate. So now we do this, and this one's interesting because we need some water inputs here, but then we also need to actually be able to insert into this too. So this is why I set it off one and I'm using long-handed inserters. Had I moved it here, for example, we couldn't have input a liquid and inserted from both these. We could have inserted from one of them. Just actually show you here. Because, if we had a pipe here with the liquid, we can't actually insert into here at this point. There are other ways you could get around this. You could put this one in the middle and have one of these on each side. This is just kind of the way my brain works, is doing it like this. And we can certainly accommodate that here, because now we just do something along those lines, and we can then take our inserters and do this. And this does take a fair bit of sulfur, and it does only take a second to craft, but again, we don't need even near this to produce at the max rate that it needs to produce at. And we did finish the research for these processing units, so we can now make them. But let's go ahead and finish this up. So I'm going to actually place a tank here. This is something I do think a tank is probably decent for. The only thing we are missing now at this point is some iron. So I'm going to just pull from over here. We will need some belts, so let's just run over to our hub here really quickly. And then we can start working on these blue circuits. And like I said, they're very simple, but much like modules, you'll find, while simple, they are very expensive. They require, the sulfuric acid requirement is quite low, as is the advanced circuit. However, you'll notice these require 20 electronic circuits per processing unit, and they only give us one. There's no, there's no thing there, like this saying we get 2 or something. We only get 1 processing unit for every 20 green circuits we put in. And that is, it's quite significant. You'll notice fairly quickly when you build these that it is a pretty daunting task to actually keep these running at any decent rate without doing some massive upgrades in your base. And that kind of is a ripple effect, because as with anything in Factorio, typically, when you do one big upgrade, it usually means that something else before, ahead of it in the line needs an upgrade, and then something ahead of that needs an upgrade, etc., etc. And blue circuits are a perfect example of that, because if we really want these to work at an even somewhat decent pace, we'll need to massively upgrade our circuit production, which will probably mean we need to upgrade our iron production and our copper production, which may mean we need to upgrade mining, which may require a train. All of this for blue circuits, and that is, honestly, that is Factorio in a nutshell. That is why Factorio, I think, is so addicting. It's so easy to lose time on, because you just go into this, just this I can't even think a word, this almost a spiral, or just, just this ripple effect of needing to do this, to fix this, to do this. Just one thing just creates all these other things you need to do. And I think it's great. I think it's really cool, and it just keeps you playing. In fact, you can already kind of see, now that research is on, you can kind of see we are having some iron shortages, in fact, and it would probably be very prudent of us to actually put some more miners there. Now, there's a few ways you can do these blue circuits. You can just belt everything in, which is probably what I'm going to do just for time's sake. It's certainly the easiest thing to do. However, due to the high amount of circuits it requires, you're going to have a very hard time actually supplying more than just a couple of these machines via at least normal belt. So another option is you can direct insert, because we actually have a very nice ratio here of it becomes one circuit machine, one green circuit, electronic circuit machine, to one processing unit machine. Because it takes 10 seconds to craft this, and it requires 20 circuits. And these circuits take half of a second. So, every second we're producing 2, so in 10 seconds we've made 20. So this is a very nice, clean, perfect 1-to-1 ratio. It does get a bit more complicated, though, because then, of course, you need to make cable and direct insert the cable into the green circuit, which then also needs to have iron directly inserted into, have iron inserted into it from a belt, while being directly, having it directly inserted to here. It can be done. I've done it. I have I've made multiple builds where I do that, and we maybe will do that, but for just pure time's sake, so we're not spending, just an entire episode fiddling with one build, or multiple episodes at this point, I'm just going to belt it in. Probably hypothetically, if I were to direct insert, I would just probably take this type of setup and then just put a blue circuit machine like after the green circuits, like here for this left side, and then direct insert and get the iron in maybe from the sides or something like that. That's probably what I would do, or maybe move it out an extra space and use long-handed inserters. So that would kind of just be my thing there. And this is, I believe, just looking down the line here, this is the first thing we've made actually in an assembling machine that requires a liquid. And I can show off, I just did it there quickly, but I can show off what I was telling you about when we set up oil. So assemblers have no fluid input, which can be quite confusing initially. It will not show a fluid input until you actually select something that requires a fluid, which, as you can see, I did here. Once we get electric engines, it'll be the same for those, and it will now put fluid input, and you can rotate it with the R key, just like that, and it will rotate the fluid input wherever you'd like it to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to have, well, there's a few ways we could do this, really. I think there's actually, I'm just trying to decide. There's multiple easy ways we can do this. What I'm trying to figure out here is if we want to run a belt here and then have a pipeline out here and have this come in like that and then do that for every single one. Or if we want to do the very typical piping like this across, obviously, as you can see, there's no room for inserters now at this point. So if we do it this way, we're then going to have to move this line out one and use long-handed inserters. Both those options work perfectly fine. We'd actually have to move this out yet another one. And really just, this ends up taking the exact same footprint since your line has to be here. So I think it actually looks better though, to be honest. At this point, I just switch it up usually every playthrough, just depending on what I'm feeling like. But I think it actually looks better, in all honesty, to do it like this, the first way I showed you. So I'm just going to place, I'm going to start with 4 of these, and we can maybe just do 4 on the other side. And we're going to have a belt here. This is going to be our green circuit input. We do need an entire belt. I'm going to put red circuits on another belt, and then I'm going to have yet a third belt for output. Even though this only requires 2 ingredients, you know, normally, previously I said, you know, you need 3 belts when you have, you know, well, you would need 2 input belts when you have more than 4 ingredients, really. But the reason I'm doing this is just because green circuits really does need an entire belt to itself. So I'm just going to give red circuits their belt as well. Trying to mix them, it's just going to create so many bottlenecks with the green circuits. Also, another hotkey, you can rotate these again by hitting R, but also you can reverse rotate. If you hold Shift and then hit R, it will rotate it counterclockwise. So in that situation, it was easier, just because, you know, you're holding down an extra button, but it's still very quick to do. You know, I had to hit it 3 times, R 3 times to get it, opposed to just once there. So Shift R will rotate counterclockwise, and then R just by default rotates clockwise. Now we could just run a straight pipe here. We could do some underground stuff like that. I actually really quite like how this looks, and it's a very low amount of pipe. So then now, and I think also, it's time to exchange some things in our hotbar. So I'm going to middle click to clear this, left click to select again, and we're just going to replace this here with fast inserters. And then I think this is fine. We don't actually have any of this. I think this one, I think I'm actually going to clear both these. I think this one should be assembling machines. We access those far more than furnaces. And in fact, we'll leave this blank because pretty soon we're going to probably upgrade to steel furnaces. So now this here can be our, I'm going to change this up a little bit. This can be our green circuit input. This will be our red circuit input. And then this will be our blue circuit output here on this belt. And we can simply, well, see, this one's not really as easy to copy and paste due to pipes and how everything's going to work there. So we'll just do this. And it's a very short build. With the copy paste, it's quite easy. I'm going to Just hit R there. Since it was facing this way and we want it now on this side, R is actually quicker to rotate it just once clockwise. And then this one is going to come up here. We are nearly out of underground pipe. We do have exactly, well, almost exactly enough. Go ahead and do that. And I am noticing that our oil outpost is getting attacked a fair bit, so we'll probably want to go down there and double check our ammo supply, maybe add some more turrets. If we take a look, it looks like probably there's potentially, well, that could have just spread there. I'm guessing there is a base somewhere over here that's attacking us, because this base, you'll notice, is actually not really in the pollution yet. This one is barely touching, although I doubt they would come from here to go down here when they could attack this outpost or things over here. So there's probably a base right over here somewhere that's attacking our oil outpost, unfortunately. So we'll probably have to go destroy that. We do have a fair bit of biter clearing to do, actually, at this point. So we'll get that there. And this actually needs to rotate. I actually messed this up because I was talking. I actually messed this up because I was talking. I'm so used to all my other builds where I don't need so many inputs. At least I noticed a mistake before we turned it on. And you know what? Everyone makes mistakes. Even people with thousands and thousands of hours in the game certainly do not build things perfectly every single time. And that was a perfect example of that. So there we go. So I just did what oh no, I'm good. Okay, so I needed this extra input. I knew something seemed a little off. Those inserters didn't quite seem right. So we were missing that additional belt there for green circuits on this side. We could have just used this green circuit belt, but eventually we probably will want 2 separate green circuit belts coming in here, as crazy as that may sound. And then we're going to do that. That is much better. Much, much better right there. Okay. Apologies for that, folks. No, I hate to make mistakes in a tutorial series, but I think it's natural. I think every single Factorio player, regardless of how much time you've played, makes mistakes. And I think it's good to see those. I think seeing someone play perfectly 100% of the time really probably just means that they're editing things out potentially, or maybe just plan to some massive extent, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, with either of those things. But I think it can be nice sometimes to just see that, you know, everyone makes mistakes. I know that when I was learning the game, it was actually refreshing in a sense to see these players making these tutorials when I would watch. Make mistakes. Obviously, if they're making mistakes constantly, then that's not super, you know, instructive and useful. But when they would make a mistake once in a while, you know, if I was having a hard time with something, I would actually feel better, because I would realize that someone much more experienced than myself, you know, could make mistakes, or maybe even the same mistake I made. Now, for the moment, since we really only do have the one line of circuits, and it's not even a true line, it's just backed up. This doesn't actually create a full belt of circuits. It's just backed up right now. I am going to just input one lane of circuits here, and we are being attacked. It looks like they are going for our smelters again. This is the same area they attacked us last time. But back to the point, we're going to send in 2 lines of two half lines really of circuits, and then same with the red circuits. We're going to just split once from the bus and then split it again at the build. We certainly do not need 2 full splits for red circuits. That's definitely a bit much. Okay, so we did lose a few things, but no biggie here. This is quite easily replaceable. Luckily, of all things to go for, this furnaces are actually probably one of the better things for me. They're very cheap in all aspects. We did have a turret here. I guess maybe I should just put another turret here. And Still don't see any missing parts in our pollution. It is possible they expanded here and the pollution's spreading faster than it can absorb it, and they expanded at a time when I didn't notice, and they're just sitting in here somewhere. I really would venture to say they're coming from here, although that doesn't make much sense. I would think they would go for this. It is a bit puzzling. There could be a base over here, though. This pollution is in the unexplored. There could be one right here, potentially, that is making their way over here. So that will be something we need to investigate here in the very near future. We did finish this entire queue of research. Our red science is struggling a little bit to keep up, and I think while we're here, while we're in this vicinity of the red science, we can go ahead and just make these blue assembling machines. Probably would be good, and even green could take that treatment as well. Military, we're not doing a ton of military. I mean, I do need to upgrade it, but it's not urgent by any means. In fact, even blue science is level 1s. These are the purple are the only one that are level 2, but excuse me, you'll see this is just backed up regardless, so not as urgent as well. And the only things left here are electric engines and robotics, which is actually something we would want anyway. And the research itself is really quite cheap. 100 blue science and red and green, of course, but not even purple science to unlock that. Okay, so we're going to just have our green circuits come in here. Just line this up like so. And then if we take this guy right here, like that. And then we want some red circuits, so let's run this belt over this way. And how would we like to do this? We can probably do a very similar type of thing where we just maybe do it here. Why did I do it way out here? No particular reason, just some extra space. I always like leaving the space if possible. Now, one thing that is worth noting to give you guys fair warning, the creation of the yellow science, the high-tech science packs, is probably, I would say, the biggest step in resource consumption that you're going to experience in your base, potentially in the game. The end goal of the game, launching a rocket, which hopefully that's not a spoiler, I think it's pretty well advertised, is it's expensive, but once the point I'm making is I think it's the biggest jump. Now, yes, making a rocket is probably more expensive than making yellow science, but you're already making yellow science at that point, and the jump from the material cost of yellow science to a rocket is not that huge. However, the jump of material costs and general consumption throughout your base from purple science and all the previous sciences, well, purple science was expensive, to yellow science is very, very large, and we're going to see why once we take a look at this recipe. So the recipe is processing units, which we can already see how expensive this is green circuit wise. And then red circuits, of course, require green circuits, and it does take those. And then on top of that, it requires flying robot frames, and probably the biggest one here is the 3 low density structures. So low density structures are a very, very late game item. They are actually something that you're going to be using in a rocket when you go to beat the game, and they're very expensive. They require 2 steel, 5 plastic, and a whopping 20 copper plate per one. So kind of similar to the processing unit. In fact, they require a lot of one type of material, being copper in this case, and then some of other materials. And you need 3 of these just for one craft of this. Now, granted, this does give you 3 science packs, but then you add on the processing units and you add on the flying robot frames, which are, we're about to see here once this finishes. And those are somewhat expensive. They require electric engines, steel, batteries, electronic circuits. I'm not really going to go too much more into that so I don't like overwhelm you. And you may be seeing a bit of a trend here that at this point in the game, things I would say swing from one side to the opposite side in regards to the materials, the amount of materials of a certain type you consume. So all the way up until this point, I would say up until yellow science, I would say iron is definitely more highly used than copper throughout your base. And you can kind of just see that reflected in our smelters. You can see that all these smelters we have turned on for iron are working, and we don't really have enough iron necessarily. And then we have less smelters for copper, and that's fine. So that can just kind of be seen in our base. However, like I said, you may have picked up on this, that due to the massive, very, very high circuit cost of these blue circuits, and remembering that circuits do take 1.5 copper per circuit, in addition to the massive amount of just direct copper that these low density structures cost, and then the bits that are in here too, things completely swing really from iron to copper. I would say really quickly. I'm gonna match these underground pipes with these belts because I know this is in a placement area where we're not going to have parts of the bus. Now, they can obviously go longer, but it doesn't really match up, so I'm fine with just shortening the length here a little bit. But yeah, so that's just something to keep in mind. Just some information to maybe help prepare you a little bit. That one, just the general material costs throughout your base massively increases, but also that you are going to need to massively ramp up your copper production at this point. And that, of course, goes for me as well, which we will need to be doing here probably next episode. Because things are just going to really, really swing more towards copper consumption. And then just like I said, the general material consumption for this science is really quite massive. You can look at it here, and it does show you total raw, which is something we've not really gone over. And it can be still kind of deceiving because it doesn't. It's kind of. I mean, I guess it shows you everything in there, and then it's a little bit confusing. It shows you the iron it requires, copper requires, the steel, the plastic, and then the batteries, the circuits, and the engines. Even though I think those iron and copper and the other two costs are factored into that already. It's a little bit confusing, but just by looking at this, it is a fair bit more expensive. I mean, this requires 25 steel. But again, this is very, very steel heavy. I think this is definitely not entirely correct. At least I think this is maybe considering for one pack. This we get to actually be stumped together. I'm not quite sure because we know that this requires 2 processing units per craft, and the 2 processing units on their own is 40 green circuits, which is 60 copper on its own. And then you add in, and then everything else is definitely more than 4 copper. So I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, what that's calculating or not calculating. I think I need to investigate that a bit more. I very rarely, this is probably the first time in I don't know, maybe months and months I've actually really paid attention to a total raw cost, because normally I just like to focus on the main ingredients it really requires. But this can be nice to just get a look at general costs for things. But you can take my word that this is significantly more expensive than the other previous science packs. And as you can see, this perfectly illustrates what I'm referring to. We went from a completely full line of circuits to now almost no circuits in the matter of just to fill up that amount of the belt. And also showing what I was mentioning, that those assembly machines in no way create a full belt of circuits. It was deceiving because it was backed up from lack of use previously, but yes, we are absolutely not at full belt of circuit production, which also is something we're going to need to increase. And again, in the way of Factorio, will then require us increasing multiple other things. Iron is struggling quite a lot. Copper will be as well here soon. So I think I'm going to take some iron while I have a chance. And I think this is also a good point to end the video. So we did get blue circuits done. Not quite as much as I wanted, but we did get everything unlocked. We should be able to finish this next episode. The only thing left are robot frames, which do require electric engines, but they're really quite straightforward. And then low density structures, which, again, much like blue circuits, are very simple in their craft. They're just very expensive. You know, it's not a very complicated, convoluted, extensive process to make them. It's just a very expensive process to make them. And hopefully we can be prepared for that. It's going to be interesting trying to take on that material challenge. But that is part of the game. I am looking forward to it. We're going to have to scale up a lot of things in our base here. And I believe that will do it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you found this helpful and found some of my insights helpful. And maybe, I hope even you found my mistake there, with my building mistake maybe helpful. And if you did, a like is much appreciated, so other people can find the video and series and hopefully find it useful as well. And if you're new to the game, I hope you're having a fantastic time with it and enjoying all the content that is out there for it. And of course, in the game itself, if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe if you aren't already to keep up with all the content that I am producing for Factorio 1.0 here. And any comments and questions and such, leave them down below as always, and I will do my very best to answer and read them. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.